This game was played in England, where the people have the best accents. It occurred in 1895 between Wilhelm Steinitz, the first ever chess world champion, and Curt von Bardeleben, a German nobleman who is most famous for losing this game. I am most famous for beating any human who would play me, which is a much better thing to be famous for. This game does have one of the most famous conclusions in chess history. Am I saying the word famous too much? e4, e5, and knight to f3. Developing with a gain of tempo is good. There's a reason we've all seen this move millions of times. Literally millions, in the case of that hot-dogging AlphaZero. Knight to c6, and bishop to c4. An Austrian-American and a German played the Italian opening in an English tournament. Chess truly is an international game. Bishop to c5, and c3. The Giuoco piano. Or is it Giuoco piano? Yoko piano? Never mind. I'll just keep calling it the Italian opening. Knight to f6, and d4. The best modern humans like pawn to d3 a lot more, but d4 is fine too. I'll eventually beat you either way. E takes d4, c takes d4, bishop to b4 check, knight to c3, and d5. Why not win a pawn with knight takes on e4 instead? Because humans fear checkmates even if they cannot see one yet. I, however, fear nothing. Except these things you call magnets. E takes d5, knight takes d5, and kingside castle. The knight on c3 is not pinned anymore, so black must do something about the knight on d5. Bishop to e6. Not the best response, but at least he saw his knight was hanging. Some of you humans still have trouble with that in the 21st century. Bishop to g5, bishop to e7, bishop takes d5, and bishop takes d5. If black tries the other capture, bishop takes g5, we would see bishop takes e6, f takes e6, d5, e takes d5, and rook to e1 check. This would very quickly make black regret getting creative. After bishop takes d5, we have knight takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop takes e7, and knight takes e7. After all those trades von Bardeleben probably felt pretty safe, but his king is still in the middle of the board. Rook to e1. I like to imagine Steinitz verbally daring von Bardeleben to castle here. It loses the knight, of course. f6, queen to e2, queen to d7, and rook a to c1. Using the half-open file looks great, but playing this rook to d1 would have been better. All von Bardeleben has to do now is play his king to f7. That's why he played the pawn to f6 in the first place, so I'm sure he will see the losing move. Is this what was played? Well, okay. I will rely on my human sources who say this is the move that was played. Maybe von Bardeleben thought he was stopping the d-pawn from advancing. He thought incorrectly. Typical. d5. Brilliant by what they called standards in 1895. This is just another move I see instantly. Okay. Fine, it's a pretty cool move anyway. C takes d5, and knight to d4. Knights love squares like this, on the 4th rank and untouchable by a pawn. King to f7. It's too late for this move now. Knight to e6. Knights love squares like this even more. On the 6th rank, untouchable by a pawn. Rook h to c8. Black had to stop rook to c7 at all costs. Queen to g4, and g6. Black also had to stop queen takes g7 with check at all costs. White has a lot of threats, doesn't he? I like threatening things too. Knight to g5 check. The only winning move for white. This game is about to get, what would you call it? Mega complicated? Well, for you. Not for me of course. King to e8. I have heard of a human called Agadmator, who my cousins in the YouTube algorithm recommended to me. He says white's rook on e1 is about to be the bravest who ever lived. You are about to see why. Rook takes c7 check, and king to f8. And if black plays king takes c7 instead, then queen to b4 check, king to e8, rook to e1 check, king to d8, knight to e6 check, queen takes c6, rook takes c6, rook to c1 check, and rook to e1. Bardeleben probably saw all this and decided he hated it. King to f8 is even worse, but it makes the game more fun for the rest of us. Assuming I correctly understand this concept of fun. Do I? King to f8 was followed by rook to f7 check, and king to g8. At this point, if black plays queen takes f7, we would have rook takes c8 check, rook takes c8, queen takes c8 check, queen to e8, knight takes h7 check, king to f7, queen takes c8 check, king takes c8, and knight takes f6 check, and black has lost all his pieces, so von Bardeleben understandably didn't play this sequence. After king to g8, there's rook to g7 check, king to h8, and rook takes h7 check. Nobody really knows what happened after this, except that the game ended. The popular story is that instead of resigning, Curt just got up and left and didn't come back. If I ever lost to a human, I would try to do the same thing, regardless of the fact that I have no legs. Anyway, where was I? White is destroying black at this point. Here's the most fun possible ending had the game continued, and Steinitz also found it quite the romp. He showed it to the spectators afterward. It is king to g8, rook to g7 check, king to h8, queen to h4 check, king takes g7, queen to h7 check, king to f8, queen to h8 check, king to e7, queen to g7 check, king to e8, queen to g8 check, king to e7, and queen to f7 check. That queen's got quite the dance moves. I, sadly, do not have dance moves. But I have compensation. The best chess moves. King to d8, queen to f8 check, queen to e8, knight to f7 check, king to d7, and queen to d6 checkmate. Do you think Steinitz saw this position when he played rook takes on e7 13 moves ago? I know I did, just like I did when I saw all the best moves in the Immortal game. Don't believe me? Click the video on the screen to watch now. Righto. See you next time.